Hello friends and welcome to this video. So I want to touch on how to find that balance when it comes to building your new online business and trying to fit that around your full-time job, your family, your hobbies, your passions, or anything else you've got going on in your life. It's extremely important that we have the mental energy and creativity to sit down after work in the evenings or whatever time you work, to sit down and put the work into that business that we're building, right? Sit in front of the computer and actually have the energy to put into it. Because there's one thing that I've noticed over the last 12 years when I was working my full-time engineering job. I did this thing called quiet quitting, which essentially means that I quit my job 2 to 3 years before I actually handed in my notice. Now, there was a strategy to this because I didn't want to quit my job because I needed the money to supplement my lifestyle. I needed to pay bills. I needed to fund the business, the ideas I had, the things I needed to build the business. So you can't just quit your job to go full-time online before you're making any money. We need to do the online business as a side hustle before we can get it to the point where we can actually quit our job and then do it full-time. But you can't go to work all day, especially if you've got a really intensive job where you're on your feet all day, you're constantly problem solving, coming up with new ideas, firefighting, whatever crazy business or job position you have, there's no way that you can go to work for, let's say, 8 hours. That's like a normal day, 8 to 10 hours. You're using all this mental energy up at work, and then you're coming home in the evenings with all of that gone. You're completely burnt out. And this is why I see a lot of people fail when it comes to building their side business, because they just simply don't have the energy to put into it. So we need to do the quiet quitting thing because we need to clear up some of that mental energy and lower our performance at work, not to the point where we're getting fired, because obviously we need this job, we need this money. We need to lower our performance to, let me give you an example. Like when I was at my engineering job, I was a model employee for the first 9-10 years, right? I would always be doing overtime, always getting to work early, always doing all these little jobs that the boss gave me because I wanted to impress him and I wanted to impress the other directors and the other managers and things like that. So I would always be the person who volunteered for if there's anything going, because I just wanted to almost make myself look better in front of other people, right? That's just the game. Sometimes if you climb the corporate ladder, you do have to play this game where you're doing everything you can to try and impress people, right? And as sad as it is, that's just how it works in that sort of field. So there used to be this guy who used to have the worst performance in the building, but he would never get fired. He would never get pulled up. He would never get in trouble. So I looked at him and I felt like, why am I doing all this extra stuff when there's this guy that's putting in the bare minimum, who goes home literally like, the phrase last in, first out? Well, this was literally him, right? He was getting to work pretty much late, blaming it on like external factors like the train or traffic, and then he would leave early as well. So I looked at that and I thought, well, that is this exact mental attitude that I need to take in order to free up some of this mental energy for my side business. So I started to do the same. I started to get to work pretty much bang on time, or sometimes a little bit late. I started to leave as early as I could get away with. I stopped working through my lunch break. I stopped doing any overtime at all. There were some guys still working weekends and Friday evening, Friday afternoon. I stopped doing all of that. I stopped doing all the little favors. I stopped volunteering for absolutely everything. I did the bare minimum, the least I could get away with without getting into trouble, because I was still performing better than the worst person in the room. And I think that's the key. That's leverage in a way. They can't use that against me because there's still someone performing a lot worse than I was. And this is the approach I took for 2 to 3 years, and it massively helped, because when I got home in the evenings, I felt like I had so much more energy to put into my own business. So I could sit down in front of my laptop every single evening for hours on end until like 11 o'clock at night, and I still have that creativity to put into the business. Because at the very start, it does take, you need to build that momentum, you need to build that snowball effect, and it takes time, it takes dedication, it takes consistency. So if you don't have the energy and you don't have the motivation or discipline because whatever else is stressing you out and you're struggling to find that balance, there's some things you need to cut back on. Like, obviously, if you have a family, you can't cut back on that because that's a responsibility to adhere to, right? If you have responsibilities, they become the first and foremost the most important things in your day, right? However, if you do have a job that is compromising your creativity, compromising your motivation, that's the first place that I would look to try and reduce your performance and free up some of that energy, right? There's only so much in a day you can do. Yeah, we're all humans. There's only so much you can give in a single day. So this is why we need to look for things that we can essentially cut out. For example, if you've got other hobbies, like let's say you like going to the gym. Now, there's nothing wrong with going to the gym, but just bear in mind at the very start, when we're trying to build that momentum, there does need to be some sacrifice somewhere, right? I'm not saying you need to cut the gym altogether. I used to go to the gym for 2.5 hours every single evening, mostly every evening. And I just simply cut that back to an hour, right? 45 minutes, an hour. You're still going to the gym, but you're just reducing the time that you spend in the gym. Again, this is freeing up time to put into your business. So it's all these little things. Like, let's say, for example, you love watching movies, you love watching TV shows. Well, you need to ask yourself, are these hobbies, are these activities contributing to the dream that I have of building this online business? Because if they're not, then you need to cut them out. You need to cut them away because they're just holding you back. There's only so much time in a day you have. Like, let's say, for example, you have 24 chips in a day, right? 24 hours. 8 of them you spend sleeping. Let's say you spend 8 at work. You spend a couple of hours commuting and getting ready for work. Let's say you spend an hour at the gym. That leaves you with literally like 4 hours, right? 4 hours to build your own business, to build your own dream, right? That's not very much time at all. So let's say you have them 4 hours. What are you spending? What else are you doing in those 4 hours? You're watching TV. 4 hours is so important that you spend those 4 hours actually doing the tasks that are going to move you to the destination you want to be. And if you're building a business, those 4 hours should be spent on the business, right? On nothing else, especially at the start. Don't get me wrong. Once you start to build that momentum, you have a bit more time, you have a bit more energy to put into other things. You can take a step back because you've built the momentum. Then you can take your foot off the gas slightly. But at the very start, you need to build the business first, and you need to make sacrifices along the way. So if you're doing things that aren't contributing to the business, then these are the first places I would look at to not completely cut away, but just be more realistic with what you can get away with and what you can't. Because if you're telling people, if you're saying to yourself that you want to build this business, you want to make an extra £1,000 a month, you want to make an extra £10,000 a month, £100,000 a month, whatever the sum is or whatever the goal is, and you're going away and doing these other things, then you're not doing the thing that you said that you want to do, right? You said you want to build this business, but you're over here, maybe you're playing Xbox, PlayStation, you're watching Netflix, you're watching films, you're going down the pub with friends, you're doing things that aren't contributing to the growth of the business. And that's not how you do it. You need to sacrifice your time, you need to sacrifice the things you enjoy doing, you need to sacrifice your performance at work. If you truly want to build a business and you want to change your life and have the freedom and the financial success to do so, you need to cut back on these things that are holding you back in life, right? Don't get me wrong, absolutely fine. It's good to socialize. It's good to go out and network with people. It's good to go out and, enjoy things and have fun. But you need to have that balance between deciding what's important for you and deciding what's important for the business. I did this for 3 years and it worked fantastic, right? I was able to free up so much of my mental energy. I had so much more motivation going into the evenings when I got home. I was actually excited to sit down in front of my laptop and put this extra work in. And not only that, when I did start to do this quiet quitting thing, it just changed my whole attitude and outlook on work itself. So I was no longer focused and, driven by the employment that I had. It was more of a case where I would go there and I would just kind of wait until I could go home. And then, all day I'd be thinking about the business. I'd be doing things throughout the day to somehow learn or add to the business. Like, for example, try and listen to as many audiobooks and podcasts as I could while I was at work, right? There was that point where I was running the CAD CAM department, and I would essentially have a podcast on like all day, every day. And I would literally almost like motivate all the other employees, the other staff members under me, to also listen to these podcasts, because in a way I felt like I was not only learning myself, but I was inspiring others to start their own businesses. So at one point there was about 6 of us in this CAD room, and we'd all just be listening to these podcasts and audiobooks every day, and people would just be so motivated by what we was listening to. So you went into the other departments in the building, and they would have like Radio 1 on, like greatest hits, like Wave 105, like all this crap nonsense of just mainstream media, like bollocks. And we would just be sat in this room just consuming information, consuming audiobooks. And I really fully believe that this was the turning point. This was what really made me find the extra gear, because when you're sat around, you're consuming all this information and this knowledge every single day, it really does make you think differently. You look at every single aspect of life completely different. It changes your perception. You're listening to people on these podcasts, on these audiobooks, who are successful people. They're in a position you want to be, so you listen to them. And the phrase, you are the sum of the 6 people you hang around with, right? So although I wasn't directly hanging around with these people, I was consuming their content on a daily basis, and so was everyone in that room. And guess what? Everyone in that room wanted to start their own online business. A few of the people in that room, they've gone on to start property endeavors. So there's one guy who's got massively into property. Another guy got into e-commerce. Another guy got into digital products. So it just shows it's the influence that you have from the information you consume. And I think too many people live in this automated world where they're just like zombies listening to Radio 1 on repeat every single day. On the way to work, when they get to work on the radio, on the way home from work, they put on the news when they get home, and they're just consuming all this negativity and this information that doesn't get them to where they want to be. So my advice there is just to switch up what you're listening to. Stop consuming a load of crap. Consume stuff from people who are in a position you want to be, right? Consume audiobooks, consume podcasts, consume, informative media from aspiring entrepreneurs. That's the best thing I ever did for myself. And I did this for years. We literally have like the podcast on all day inside the CAD room on like the speakers, like full blast. So everyone was listening. They didn't really have a choice, to be fair. So changing the type of content that I consumed has had a massive impact on my own success and many other people that I work with, their success also. Because it does, right? You are the product of the 6 people you hang around with. So although you might not directly be hanging around with these people, you are listening to this information, right? Imagine every single day if all you listen to is people like building like 6, 7, 8, 9-figure businesses, very successful people, and every single moment of every day, you're not listening to Radio 1 and you're listening to these podcasts and audiobooks instead. You're going to pick up these golden nuggets and you're going to learn, and it's going to normalize a lot of things for you. I think that was a massive thing for me. Like, I used to think that making 100,000 in a single month was just impossible. That wasn't even heard of from where I came from and the types of people that I used to hang around with. But when you listen to podcasts where, every guest or multiple guests are saying that they're running these 7-8 figure businesses, it almost becomes normal in your brain to achieve this, right? Because if they're doing it, then it makes it possible. If all of these people this guy is having on his podcast are achieving this crazy success, then it's no longer just a dream, it's an achievable goal. So yeah. So what have we got then? We've got quiet quitting, we've got filling every single moment with education, right? With content that's going to inspire you, motivate you, or you're going to learn something, right? So if you do those 2 things, while you're at work. You could even I used to use my car as a personal library, right? So, the drive was 20 to 30 minutes. So if you think about that, that's an hour a day traveling, depending on where you're working. That's an hour of audiobooks. And this is what I used to do, podcast audiobooks in the car. So I'd listen to them in the car, I'd get to work, I'd put them on with my headphones or just put them on the radio, on the speakers. And think how many podcasts you can get through, how many books you can do by using this sort of strategy. But most people just don't learn enough. They're not taking these risks. They're not consuming this knowledge. They think that when they leave school and university, that's where the education stops. But it's not true. That's where education starts, because this is where you can finally start learning the things in life that are going to get you to your end goal. And let's say your end goal is building a business, changing your life, creating generational wealth. Well, these are the things you need to learn. These are the books that you need to read, the podcasts that you need to listen to, the people you need to listen to, because these are going to get you to where you want to be over here, building your business and having success with it. So that's it for this one, guys. I hope you enjoyed that. If you want more information or you want me to work with you more closely, then I've got a free community that you can join. I put the link in the description. I'll also pin it in the comments. I'd love to see you in there. I talk about all things building online businesses. Right now, I've got 2 courses on physical products and digital products. So it's mainly in the e-commerce space, but we're also tapping into building personal brands, YouTube channels, and just selling products online and ultimately creating online businesses that can replace our income so we can quit our jobs and do this stuff full time, because we live in an age where we've got the internet, right? We can leverage social media, we can leverage the internet to build online businesses. We no longer have to get a full-time 9 to 5 that we don't enjoy. We can now print money online from wherever we are in the world, right? So if you like this video, subscribe and let me know in the comments what you think, any feedback, and I'll see you in the next one.